Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To session assignment. My name is Nurjana Zani, and today I will be presented about the assignment given. I see an international criminal law assignment given, which is the war crimes. So to start off, we start with the introduction. A war crime is a violation of the laws of war. The legal understanding of war crimes has been codified in several multilateral treaties, most notably the Geneva Conventions. More recently, the most comprehensive legal statement on war crimes was the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, which is the ICC in short. The formal concept of war crimes emerged from the codification of customary international law that applied to warfare between sovereign states, such as the Libel Code in 1863 of the Union Army in the American Civil War and the Hague Convention of 1899 and 1907 for international war. In the aftermath of the Second World War, the war crimes trials of the leaders of the Axis powers established the Nuremberg principles of law, such as the international criminal law defines what is a war crime. In 1949, the Geneva Convention legally defined new war crimes and established that states could exercise universal jurisdiction over war criminals. In the late 20th century and early 21st century, international courts extrapolated and defined additional categories of war crimes applicable to civil war. So under the Nuremberg principles, war crimes are different from crimes against peace. Crimes against peace, including planning, preparing, initiating or waging a war of aggression, or a war in violation of international treaties, agreements, or assurance. Because the definition of a state of war may be debated, the term war crime itself has seen different usage under different systems of international and military law. It has some degree of application outside of what some may consider being a state of war, but in areas where conflicts persist enough to constitute social instability. So a war crime is a serious violation of the laws and customs applicable in armed conflict, which also known as international humanitarian law, giving rise to individual criminal responsibility under international law. So, according to some scholars, war crime refers to grave breach of the Geneva Conventions or Additional Protocol 1, or a serious violation of the laws and customs that apply to armed conflicts. This can include willful killing, torture, or inhuman treatment, taking hostages, killing prisoners, attacks on undefended towns, which are not military objectives, or attacks on civilians or those who are providing humanitarian assistance. The list is long, but the overall aim of IHL is to reduce unnecessary suffering associated with conflicts. Not all violation of IHL constitutes a war crime. To be considered as a war crime, the violation must entail, under customary or treaty law, the individual criminal responsibility of the person breaching the rule. War crimes are serious violations of IHL committed in international and non-international armed conflict that give rise to individual criminal responsibility. To be liable for a war crime, the victim must be protected under the Geneva Convention, and then the Geneva Convention 1, 2, and 3 apply to soldiers, while Geneva Convention 4 applies to civilians and unlawful combatants. So the following acts are war crimes under Rome Statute, Article 8. The first one is willful killing. torture, biological experiments, mutilation, unjustified destruction and appropriation of property, unlawful deportation and transfer, unlawful confinement, taking of hostages, employing poison weapons, rape, sexual slavery, enforced sterilization, forced pregnancy, and also conscripting children under the age of 15. And then we're moving on to the elements common to all war crimes. So the element listed and described below are common requirements for all war crimes. These elements are the first one, armed conflict. So there must have been an armed conflict when and where the alleged crimes were committed. And then the second one, protected person. The victim must be protected under IHL. And then the third one is nexus. There must be a sufficient nexus between the accused acts and the armed conflict. And then the fourth one is the existing IHL. The violation must be a breach of customary or treaty IHL binding on the accused. Gravity. And then the fifth, the gravity. The violation must be serious and involve grave consequences for the victim. And then six, individual criminal responsibility. The violation must entail individual criminal responsibility of persons breaching the rule. And then the last one, awareness. It is also necessary to prove that the accused was aware that an armed conflict existed. All of these elements distinguish war crimes from ordinary crimes. Importantly, it is not required to prove that war crimes were committed as part of a plan, policy, or large-scale commission of such crimes. And then we're moving on to the next slide, which I will be discuss about the hot question, which is, can civilians be charged with war crimes? So, civilians can be charged with war crimes. Most military manuals recognize a war crime as being any violation committed by members of the armed forces or by civilians against members of the armed forces or civilians. 60 countries signed the Rome Statute, which led to the establishment of the International Criminal Court, and 123 countries are now state parties to the statute. The ICC can only try a case if the offense was committed in a country that signed the Rome Statute. They may also try cases if the perpetrator is a citizen of a country that is a party to the statute. So additionally, the national court must be unable or unwilling to prosecute the crime. For example, if civilian committed a war crime in Bosnia, and National Court of Bosnia could not prosecute the case, and then the ICC may try the criminal. And then we're gonna talk about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So this is another hard question. Does Russia committed war crimes against Ukraine? So this is my finding. But before that, let me explain what war crimes is Russia said to have carried out in Ukraine. So, according to Ukraine's Prosecutor General, which is Andrei Kostin, said in September that his office has documented 34,000 potential war crimes committed by Russian forces and is mounting a case for genocide. Mass burial sites have been found in several parts of Ukraine, previously occupied by Russian troops, including some holding civilian bodies, showing signs of torture. In April, over 400 bodies of civilians were found in Bucha, a town on the outskirts of Kiev. And then in September, 450 bodies, mostly of civilians, were found in mass graves in Izium in Kharkiv region. And then in March, Russian forces carried out an airstrike on a theater of Mariupol, which was being used as a refuge for children. Also, a hospital in Mariupol was also struck in March. But what kind of evidence that can be used to bring the case to the court? And some examples of evidence that could be admissible in court include forensic and audiovisual evidence and oral testimony. For instance, physical evidence such as bodies, the position of bodies, and mass graves can point to atrocity crimes having been committed. Image posted on social media can be examined by investigators using a variety of digital tools to geolocate them. Compare them to earlier photographs or satellite image and confirm their veracity. Important witness testimony of first-hand evidence of crimes that happened in Bucha, Mariupol, and elsewhere might be provided by individual witnesses once they have reached safety. The type of evidence investigators might choose to gather can change based on context and as they see new opportunities. And then, here's come the answer. So, the United Nations has said its investigators have concluded that Russia committed war crimes in Ukraine, including bombing of civilian areas, numerous executions, torture, and horrific sexual violence. Sorry. So the UN has made the investigation of human rights violations in the war a priority, and in May, its top human rights body mandated a team of experts to begin work in the country. Since then, the UN investigators have risked their life to collect evidence of crimes perpetrated against civilians, including in areas which is still threatened by enemy forces or laid with mines. The team of 3 independent experts presented their first oral update to the UN Human Rights Council after it launched initial investigations looking at the areas of Kiev, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Sumy region, adding that it would broaden its inquiries. So, the team of investigators visited 27 towns and settlements, as well as graves and detention and torture centers, interviewed more than 150 victims and witnesses, and met with advocacy groups and government officials. And then some of the victims had told the investigators that they were transferred to Russia and held for weeks in prison, and then others had disappeared after such transfers. Interlocutors described beatings, electric shocks, and forced nudity, as well as other types of violation in such detention facilities. And then, why is investigating and prosecuting war crimes in Ukraine important for justice elsewhere? So the atrocity crimes we are witnessing in Ukraine recall previous Russian atrocities in Georgia, Chechnya, and Syria that made use of unlawful weapons and tactics, including the commission of indiscriminate strikes, the dropping of unguided bombs, the cluster munitions of civilian areas, and the targeting of hospital and healthcare facilities. Successful prosecution of blatant war crimes in Ukraine and of the crime of aggression may make it harder for states to ignore appeal for accountability the next time a powerful actor such as Russia overrides international rules. The international community's response to atrocities in Ukraine should include not only means to address justice in this instance, but a rededication to the values and mechanism of international justice that is robust, equitable, and serves those touched by atrocity crimes wherever they occur. So I think the time is timing now. So I will end my presentation about war crimes. So thank you very much. See you next semester, sir.